Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD television. I'm Steve Lance. Dr. Anthony Fauci plans to step down after decades as the director at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. But Republicans say that won't stop them from investigating him if they win control of Congress this November. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
And the CDC.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top doctor who became a household name during the COVID-19 pandemic,
As many people vaccinated.
is leaving office after 5 decades of service. In a Monday statement, Fauci says he'll step down in December as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and as chief medical advisor to President Biden. He stresses that he's, quote, not retiring, but pursuing the next phase of his career. President Biden praised Fauci on Monday, saying his work has touched all Americans' lives.
Gain-of-function research has the potential to unleash a global pandemic.
Fauci's retirement, meanwhile, comes as Republicans vow to investigate him over allegations that he funded virus research in Wuhan, China.
Again, in 2014, Dr. Fauci gave another grant to DASIC for SARS research in China. DASIC partnered with who? The Wuhan Institute of Virology.
A slew of Republicans said Monday that Fauci's resignation won't shield him from a probe, with Senator Rand Paul vowing, quote, a full-throated investigation into the origins of the pandemic, and House Minority Whip Steve Scalise saying Fauci will have, quote, ample time in retirement to testify. Fauci, meanwhile, said this last month.
Investigate me for what? For telling people to get vaccinated? For telling people to wear a mask? If they want to investigate me for that, go ahead.
And while Representative Andy Biggs accuses Fauci of, quote, conveniently resigning to avoid accountability, Fauci has previously denied that pressure from Republicans would cause him to quit.
So because there are a lot of people who have ideas about conspiracies and changing minds and flip-flopping, that's not a reason to step down. Not at all.
Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
Deaths from fentanyl are surging across the United States. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is struggling to confiscate the drug before it enters the country. Federal agents seized over 2,100 pounds of the highly lethal synthetic opioid in July. That's 3 times more than in June and almost double the previous record from April. And in Florida, state police announced the breakup of an international drug ring on Friday. 85 suspects were arrested and roughly $13 million in drugs were confiscated. Officials said that's enough to kill 96,000 people. The drugs were smuggled in suitcases on flights from Los Angeles International Airport to Orlando, Florida. Smugglers would check the bags but never board the flights. Receivers would pick up the suitcases in Florida and distribute the drugs. Meanwhile, in Wisconsin, the state's health department sounded an alarm over fentanyl deaths on Friday. It said that deaths from overdoses nearly doubled from 2019 to 2021. Close to 5 million illegal immigrants crossed into the United States in the 18 months since Biden became president. This according to a recent report. This includes dozens of individuals from the FBI's terror watch list and more than enough fentanyl to kill every single American. Congressman Buddy Carter joins us now to discuss the fentanyl crisis as well as Dr. Anthony Fauci stepping down. Congressman Buddy Carter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Congressman, Dr. Fauci has announced his retirement. Congressional Republicans have been vocal about investigating many things, including the gain-of-function research being done at the Wuhan lab and ties to Fauci's NIH. With Republicans likely to take back the majority, do you think this played a role in his decision?
Well, I don't know what played a role in this decision. I suspect this did. It should have, because I tell you, come next January, when we get into the majority, oversight and investigation, particularly into the origin of this virus, is going to be on the top of our list. And Dr. Fauci has been inconsistent. He's flip-flopped. He has declined to even look into the possibility and the probability, if you will, that this started in the Wuhan labs and that it was a result of gain-of-function research. Dr. Fauci has resisted that and not wanted to participate in that. Well, now he's going to have to answer questions before Congress. Listen, the only better news I could have gotten today, other than the fact that he's retiring, is that he would have been fired. But nevertheless, I'm I think he better have plenty of time on his hands come January, because we're going to be wanting to talk to him.
Congressman, you mentioned Dr. Fauci flip-flopping on issues. An old video of Dr. Fauci has resurfaced about him talking about natural immunity, basically unequivocally saying that the best form of inoculation is to have gotten the virus. Yet when asked recently about COVID-19 and having natural immunity, he hasn't really answered the question directly. This has a lot of people asking questions. Why do you think he answered it this way?
That's a good question, because, and that's the problem. That's why people have lost faith in his leadership, is because of the fact that he's flip-flopped on so many issues. And this is a perfect example of it. I mean, look, I got vaccinated. I went through the clinical trials, wanted to set a good example. I've had COVID. I've had the antibodies as well. So we've always known that the best source of defense and to build up immunity is through having the virus itself. We know that is the case. But with him flip-flopping, that's what's led to the deterioration of confidence in his ability to lead. So, this is good news for America, because we need to take the politics out of healthcare. He has inserted politics into healthcare, and I think that's going to be his legacy, and it's not a good legacy at all, the fact that he put politics into our public healthcare system.
Now, you're saying that he will be called to testify. Senator Rand Paul also saying this as well. With him retiring, is there a possibility that the scope or, say, the vigor of an investigation will be affected?
I certainly hope not, because this is important. We need to understand. We need to understand the origin of this. We need to make sure that this never happens again. And we can only do that if we understand the origin of it. Look, I am no fan of gain of function research. Albert Einstein said long ago, the only thing worse than ignorance is arrogance. And I consider gain of function research to be nothing more than intellectual arrogance. It has no place in our society. We need to make sure that we're not doing this again. And if indeed this did come from a leak in the Wuhan lab, then China needs to be held responsible. There's no question about that.
I want to get your thoughts, Congressman, on another issue, if I could, the fentanyl crisis. It's Overdose Awareness Month. You're a pharmacist as well. What are your thoughts on this issue plaguing the country?
Listen, this is a national epidemic. There's no question about it. And the drugs that are coming across that southern border, I think most people look at the southern border, they focus on the illegal immigrants who are coming across. I get it. I understand that is important for us to pay attention to that. But the illegal drugs that are infesting our communities, and it's every community, even in my district in South Georgia, we've got some counties that have gang activity directly related to the Mexican cartels. The amount of fentanyl in this country right now, enough to kill every American 7 times over. We're hearing horror stories, just awful stories of people taking pills that have been laced with the fentanyl and dying, especially young people. We had over 107,000 deaths last year due to overdose, many of them due to fentanyl. This is something that we've got to bring to the attention. Please don't ever take anything that you don't know where it came from, that you don't know that it came from your pharmacy, from your doctor, but make sure that you do not take it unless you know it came from a healthcare professional like your doctor or your pharmacist.
Very important advice. Congressman Buddy Carter, thank you.
Thank you.
A federal judge recently ruled that President Biden's halt on oil and gas leases is unlawful. This comes as Biden signed off on big changes for fossil fuels and renewable energy. What does it mean for you and the future of American energy? NTD's Melina Wisecup reports.
Nearly 2 years after Biden issued an executive order to pause oil and gas leases on federal lands, a federal judge has ruled this action was unlawful. Now the federal government must continue to lease lands in the 13 states that challenged the law. The states sued Biden, saying the lease ban violated the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. Nearly 20% of American oil production comes from the Outer Continental Shelf, so this ruling is good news for Americans' pocketbooks.
Well, the production increase won't occur for probably at least another year or so, because if you are going to produce oil from these leases, you of course need to drill your well, you need to get all the things going. It can take a good year or so. But nevertheless, the industry and the markets in particular, knowing that that oil is going to be on its way, you're going to see some relief even right now. So it'll be a gradual process for the impacts of resuming this oil production affecting gasoline prices in a good way. And if gasoline prices fall as a result of this, the Biden administration will be taking credit for something they've been fighting so hard to oppose, and that's the irony.
This ruling comes as President Biden recently signed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act into law. This new law incentivizes American businesses and consumers to transition to renewable energy by offering massive tax credits. It also imposes penalties on oil and gas producers through higher royalty rates and fees on methane emissions. So the judge's ruling, as well as the new Inflation Reduction Act with the green energy tax credits, how do you see all of this combined impacting the oil and gas industry moving forward?
Well, there are so many policies being implemented that are working at cross purposes, or in this case, a federal court decision. So while the Biden administration is fighting tooth and nail to shut down production where 20% of our domestic oil production is coming from, because of this judge's decision, that's going to help mitigate the harmful effects of many other Biden policies. So it's going to be a mix. Now, this is a huge decision, freeing up 20% of our oil lands for production. So the Biden administration, if they are going to increase royalties and fees, that's their way of trying to artificially pressure conventional energy prices higher, and then at the same time subsidizing wind and solar power so that they can somehow, some way get wind and solar power to be somewhat cost competitive with conventional energy. They have to do a lot more as far as carrot and stick to make that happen because the price differential is so extreme. But they're hoping that we won't notice it. They're hoping that we can accept a new normal where conventional energy prices are through the roof, not because of markets, not because they have to be that way, but because government is forcing that action.
After a record high average of $5 a gallon in June, gas prices have continued to drop over the past month, now sitting at $3.91 a gallon. It's still well above the $2 average from 2 years ago. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Federal magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart, who approved the FBI's search of former President Trump's home, said that the government has not proven that the affidavit should remain sealed. U.S. officials claim the affidavit for the warrant needs extensive redaction to protect FBI agents and the ongoing investigation into Trump. They argue there's no point of unsealing a version that's blacked out because there'd be nothing of substance left. But in a new ruling today, Judge Reinhart says a partially redacted version could still reveal some details. Meanwhile, former Pentagon Chief of Staff Kash Patel says the documents that were stored in Mar-a-Lago were declassified when former President Trump left office. He said they had to do with Russiagate and the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Patel's comments challenge a central claim made by the Department of Justice that sensitive material was at risk. Jared Kushner told Fox News yesterday that this is part of a larger pattern.
You know, what's happening now is the same thing being done by the same people in the same way. They're leaking to the same sources. They're manufacturing fabulous claims that then get debunked, shortly thereafter.
Former President Trump said that Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell should spend more time and money helping Republicans get elected instead of helping his wife's family get rich off of China. Trump is referring to Elaine Chao, his former transportation secretary. The comment comes days after McConnell said that Republicans might not win back the Senate due to, quote, candidate quality. Several Trump-backed candidates won in the primaries. Chao's sister is the CEO of a shipping company founded by their father. The company reportedly has extensive business interests inside of China. She does not have formal ties to the company, but did make media appearances with her father even after taking office. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.